In political science departments, I'm pretty much sure that you are taught the philosophy of utilitarianism, and you are also taught about the liberal philosopher John Stuart Mill. In other words, you are taught about utilitarianism and you are taught about liberalism. But there was one individual who actually comes between Bentham and John Stuart Mill, and he has made certain contributions, and those contributions are not really spoken about. And interestingly, this individual is also the individual who wrote the first Hindu phobic discourse on India. And this particular work was published in 1817, which goes by the name The History of British India. History of British India in 3 volumes written by James Mill. Just a little bit about James Mill. James Mill was born in 1773 in Scotland, and he went to University of Edinburgh, where he did his master's in divinity. The idea of the people who were supporting his scholarship was to basically make him a preacher. But after he finished his master's in divinity, he was not able to find a job. And in 1802, he moved to London, where he started a journalistic career. And he started writing in various journals and newspapers. By the time it was around 1806, he hit upon the idea of writing a history of British India. And it was in 1808 that he came in contact with Bentham, and his exposure to utilitarianism happened. It took him 12 years to finish History of British India. Earlier, he had thought that he would take about 3-4 years to write the work. But I think because of his connection with Bentham, the work got protracted, and around 1815, he was also contacted by the editor of Encyclopedia Britannica, who invited him to write some articles for the supplement to Encyclopedia Britannica. And interestingly, the writings that you find in History of British India, when it comes to the representation of Hindus and Hinduism, they have a reciprocal relationship between, or rather, the reciprocal relationship with the political writings that he did for England. And as many of you would be aware here, there were some profound political and social reforms that took place in 1832, which took Britain and a good part of Europe on the path of democracy. And it was largely because of the work of James Mill that these reforms happened. And the reason why I'm saying this is because Bentham was very philosophical. He was very sage-like. He did not have political acumen. So while he was writing stuff, and these were pretty dense, James Mill was the individual who could actually simplify those ideas and take those ideas to the masses. And of course, Bentham had some other disciples also, and James Mill was working on them, with them. So in History of British India, what you need to do is to basically look at the 7 chapters that he has written on Hindus and Hinduism. And even a cursory glance will make you realize that his sole agenda was to show Hindus and Hinduism in a very poor light. The words uncouth, savage, uncivilized, brute, and so on and so forth are found everywhere in those 7 chapters. And as he was defining the Hindus, savage and uncivilized, there was one particular theme which runs through all these 7 chapters, which is about Hindus being hierarchical and oppressive in as many ways as possible. So he begins the first chapter where he says that Hindus are uncivilized and savage because they have no sense of history. And this narrative, interestingly, has not died down. In the second chapter, he begins to describe the social structure of the Hindus. And there also he talks about, or rather he links, the hierarchical organization of the Hindu society with savagery and barbarism. In the third chapter, he begins to talk about the ideas of governance. And this is something, which will be very important for you. So what he says is that the Hindu form of governance has been hierarchical and oppressive right from the very beginning. It has been hierarchical and oppressive since antiquity. In the next chapter, he describes the Hindu laws, and there he basically twists the Dharma Shastras, and by doing that, he engenders a particular kind of narrative which you still find.